Welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. Currently, we are in Romans chapter 5, and we are breaking down why. Why we need salvation. Why are we sinners? What is sin? And what is sin? And why do we sin? Okay, I'm going to jump back into it because I want to pick up where I left off and then maybe get into talking about again the consequences of sin. I'm going to throw the question back out. Why didn't God just forgive Adam when he sinned? In other words, why did God, when Adam sinned, why did God forgive Adam? And then for that matter, why didn't God redeem him? Right? Okay, Jesus died for him, right? And the broader answer is he didn't want to. That God had sovereignty already had planned this out. Everything that we kind of see with this, including you know the expanse of man's part in this, that the part that Adam passed on, um, the sin nature to us. And so people may say, well, is that fair? Well, I mean, I'll say that when you talk about fairness, you have to look at the perspective of this. You have to look at the perspective that, um, so just look at the kind of background here, right? So this background is my office here, my home office, okay? And it's my little net, this is me. I'm sovereign in here, okay? And so kind of as you can see, this phone here is there on at my sovereignty. That little jar there is there because it's my sovereignty. Neither one serve the purpose, by the way. I just haven't thrown it out. That's actually a landline. I'm sorry, I just haven't thrown it out. But it's there because of my sovereignty. It's there as opposed to over there. It's my sovereignty. So my point is that everything that you see in here is my sovereignty. Book my sovereignty. So if I wanted to, if I wanted to say I'm going to revamp this office, in fact, my wife has been kind of, on me to revamp the office. But if I wanted to revamp the office, then everything in here, I could do what I will to it because it's mine. It's my creation. I bought it. It's my creation. Okay. So everything that you see in this space, okay, and I could say I no longer want this kind of drapes, whatever. Now I'm saying that because here's kind of a harsh reality. We are God's creation, and God can do with us as He please. So that's the broader answer to the question. Why? The why. You're out with excuses. So even if you was to be able to think, you could accuse God. You can't because what you will be reminded of in the judgment is that I'm God. Funny thing about the book of Job, if you read the book of Job, Job is one of the very, very, very few men that can say, I suffered, but I did nothing wrong. God Himself said that Job suffered and he didn't do anything wrong. God said, I'm going to let Job suffer. And when you look at the book of Job, which is I think some 42 chapters, that like 38 of the chapters is this discourse, maybe 36 chapters, some discourse between Job and his friends, back and forth over kind of why is Job suffering? They're accusing him, and you had to do something wrong. And Job is basically like, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm telling y'all, I don't care what you say, I didn't do anything wrong. And then Job got to saying that, look, um, God, okay, if I had to talk to God, I would ask God, why am I suffering? But anyway, and when God shows up and says, okay, Job, we're going to talk, he never explains to Job why he gave Job over for Satan to destroy his life. So that's kind of the kind of harsh reality. God is sovereign. He is sovereign because he's our creator. Now we've been talking about this sin, Adam's sin, this force of sin that drove Adam to sin, which again is still baffling. It drove Adam to sin, and we really don't have a clear explanation of why that nature, that force, that sin force that drove Adam to sin. Okay, so let's go back to the couple of things I want to talk about now. Romans chapter 12 again, verse 5, verse 12. Therefore, just as sin, right, entered the world through one man. So this force that now it becomes a part of man. More on that later. But just as sin entered the world through one man, and then death through sin, in this way, death spread to all men because all sin. So what does that mean right here? Because of one man, right? So we say that Adam sinned. God said, don't eat of the tree. Adam ate of the tree. That sin force, he ate of the tree. But watch this. God says that if you eat of the tree, you will die. Well, Adam did eat of the tree. He didn't die. In fact, Adam did not die until 930 years after he ate of the tree. Or around that time. So I'll put it like this, he lived to be 930 years. Okay, he lived to be 930 years. So here you see him, Adam. What does it mean that in terms of death? Because God wasn't playing. So there's the word death here. Notice here, sin entered the world, and death through sin. So through Adam's sin, his rebellion against God, then death. So what is death? So we said that the word death means there are three different meanings to death. I'm going to start from the last one. Is the eternal banishment from God. The root word of death is separation. The root word is separation. Separation. So spiritual separation, physical separation, and then eternal separation. I'm not going to spend too much time on eternal separation. I just mention it only as to why it exists, because of the sin, because people refuse to yield to God. But it's an eternal separating from God. Eternal separating from God. Now let's get to what happened with Adam. So just as sin entered the world through one man, and then death through sin, all right. So let me come out of this and do my illustration. I keep this around. And so imagine that this is God, okay? The realm of God, the life source, okay? So God tells Adam, if you eat of the fruit of the tree, you will die. So spiritual death is separation from God. Alienation, separation from God. How did that happen? All around, when you look at it in terms of God's creation, God's presence, which is life, light. During the time of Adam, there was life. Adam lived. Adam, enjoyed, you could say, the presence of God. And when Adam sinned, I got to find my thing here. Here we go. When Adam sinned, so imagine this dried out plant here is the God in the life of God. Adam was connected to God through his spirit. Okay? Adam was connected to God through his spirit. Now let me show you something here. All right, let me show you this. Okay, let me show you this. This here is sort of an illustration of what man is. Man is a spirit. He has a soul, and then the soul and the spirit lives, exists in the body. Okay? Man is a spirit. And the reason why that's important to understand is when we talk about what what man is here, understand that. So when you die physically, so spiritual death, okay, is separation from God. So look at your spirit there. Your spirit, okay, um, I want to say it's the real you. All right, I got to go a little deeper than this. So let me illustrate it this way. Let me illustrate it this way. Let's go to, I believe I want Luke. Luke chapter 9. I want to illustrate this. Oh, here we go. So, Luke chapter 9. I want to start reading about verse 38. This is known as the Transfiguration, and we'll let it explain. But the reason why I'm showing this is because this gives some detail, that fascinating details here. So verse 28 says, about 8 days after these words, he took along Peter, James, and John and went up to the mountain to pray. As he was praying, the appearance of his face changed and his clothes became dazzling white. That's the Mount Transfiguration. What was just simply the essence of Jesus shown through, right, his body, his clothes. But I want you to see something now. Verse 30. Suddenly, 2 men were talking with him, Moses and Elijah. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his death, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now, let me read the full story so you can kind of get the full impact here. And Peter and those with him were in a deep sleep, and when they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the 2 men who were standing with him. And as the 2 men were departing from him, Peter said to Jesus, Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah, not knowing what he said. Now, I'm going to go back, and I want you to look at this. So, all of a sudden, 2 men appeared for him, Moses and Elijah. Now, keep this in mind, that Moses and Elijah, Moses had been dead some, maybe 1,500 years. And Elijah had been dead some 800 years. So what were we looking at? Moses' body was buried on the mount when he left. Now, Elijah was snatched away. But we can surmise that his body died because he was just snatched away. God just took him from the physical realm, took him from the earth. Doesn't mean his body was changed or glorified. And he didn't go to heaven. So no one before the death of Jesus went to heaven. So they all went to a place in Luke that's referred to as Abraham's side or bosom. Just kind of the place of the Old Testament saints. What I want to point out, however, is that, so what are we looking at? So that's what I want. In other words, these two men are dead. What are we looking at? All right, let me show you another one. More of these lines, though. So what I want you to keep this in mind. What are we looking at? Let's go to chapter 16. Here we go. Chapter 16. And this is the story about the rich man and poor man. Jesus is speaking here. So watch this. There was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen, feasting lavishly every day. But the poor man, named Lazarus, covered with sores, was left at his gate. He longed to be filled with what fell from the rich man's table, but instead the dogs would come and lick his sores. He was just so weak he couldn't even fend the dogs off. He says, one day the poor man died and was, now get this, and was carried by the angels into Abraham's side. The rich man also died. Okay? The rich man also died and was buried. And being in torment in Hades, he looked up and saw Abraham a long ways off and Lazarus at his side. Now I want you to stop and get the picture here. What are we looking at? Here's what we know, right? Here's how the story is unfolded. You got a rich man and a poor man who was living in the land of the living. One doing well, one poor. Both died, both buried. We know for sure that the rich man died and was buried. So then he said, so Lazarus died, watch this, and was carried. What was carried? The rich man also died and was buried. What was buried? What are we looking at? So now verse 23, he's buried. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Verse 23, and being in torment in Hades, he looked up. Wait a minute. What's looking up? What are we looking at here? See, that's the point I want you to see. And let me show you one other verse before we kind of close out and pick up. Let's go to 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians chapter 5. 2 Corinthians chapter 5. And here's Paul. Notice what he's saying there. Verse 5 says, for we know that if our temporary earthly dwelling is destroyed, we have a building from God, eternal in the heavens, not made of hands. Indeed, we groan in this body, desiring to put on our dwelling from heaven, since we are clothed, we will not be found naked. Indeed, we groan while we are in this tent, burdened as we are, because we do not want to be unclothed, but clothed, so that mortality be swallowed up with life. And the one who prepared us for this very purpose is God, who gave us the Spirit as the down payment. So we are always confident knowing that while we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord. For we walk by faith, not by sight. We are confident and satisfied to be out of the body and at home with the Lord. Now, I just want you to see this. We're obviously going to come back to this. That when I say what are we looking at, I'm going to come back to my illustration here that I didn't get to. But what are we looking at here? What are we looking at? You see this experience. A person died, but existence continue on. Moses and Elijah died, and then hundreds of years later, they appear talking with Jesus. I'll get back to that because that's important to understand. Our existence, eternity, sin. All right, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome, and I'll see you in the next study.